how do you really tackle the bad bosses at workplace?
I think it's a very, very difficult situation, to have a boss who's toxic.
This team member who had a very loud personality, and she would really raise her voice. And
I keep talking to some Gen Zs who want to leave their job just because they don't like their bosses.
That sometimes catching the bull by the horns is not a bad thing.
Give us certain examples of where all you have dealt with prisoners.
I was working with a group of teenagers, and there was one boy in particular who was, really become truly withdrawn.
Welcome to Modern CMO Podcast, a series of fireside podcasts we have been having for over a few months now. This podcast is going to be extremely special. I'm extremely glad to introduce you to Asha Dutia, who is 76 years old, who has spent years in human behavior change and globalization. And also welcome Chitra Rajan, who has spent over 22 years in the male-dominated sales operations. We are here with them today to hear more from them, how they have really brought sea change in the people whom they have coached. And over to you, Ashaji. What has really inspired you to really be in this space, which is something rare to see? To our viewers, I want you to really speak to us about your own experience working with prisoners, working with trauma families, communities, and all that. OT.
Thank you for your question. I've always, I think, from the very beginning, been very, very interested in human beings as people who matter, as people who can bring a change. My husband served with the United Nations, so we traveled quite a bit. And that gave me exposure to different parts of the world and different kinds of groups and so on, and cultures and laws. So that's just.
I think from there, this observational lens caught my attention, and I was introduced about Asha Dutia during our society informal meeting, and I saw this lady engaging with 6 years old to 60 years old with same pace and energy, and coming from a very hardcore corporate life. Aggression, speed, agility was what I was always being ingrained to and holding off to. I needed that change. I needed that transformation. And I was really looking for that one guru, one mentor to really bring that change in me. And I offered for a coffee over our place. And she walked up and I said, Asha ji, would you really mentor me? Because I need this energy of yours to transform in me, connect, to observe that human behavior. And the rest is history. We are celebrating 4 years of our connections. Sunday evenings are booked with her. I tell you that I have not learned in these years of 22 in corporate that much I learned these 4 years from Asha ji. So it really brings in that diverse perspective, learning from outside. So going back to your question, these human behaviors are available everywhere. You've got to really find that one person who will tap that potential in you. And here we are sharing our experiences with you.
So also, I don't believe in hierarchies. I believe in equal opportunity, and that means equal conversations. So no guru shishya and no mentorship. So both of us have been learning from each other, and I wouldn't really say that I have learned much more from her than I can thank her.
Great. So talking about the energy that you just mentioned, you spent about 22 years in a male-dominated space, I would call it, as means the sales operations, right? And there I feel that the energy quotient that you may want to call needs to be immense. Give us a perspective of when you before you met Ashaji, and after that, what has really changed?
Firstly, I think I'm very thankful for some of the leaders that I have coached who had that diversity in them. So that's first part of it, that I never looked at only the vertical part of male, female. It is now today we are all talking about pronouns they more than he and she. So I think I have been blessed to that experience. Now, shifting my focus as I said, incorporate it towards certain objectives and developmental actions that you have to really work. It could be broadening your network within the organization. It could be improving your communication. As you walk up to the ladder of the corporate, you got to really have different, your expectations are different at each level. But I knew that there was something else beyond this, and that was about humility, because it was about learning from different perspectives and different horizons of, of learnings. So as I said, my learnings with Asha ji, the journey has always been humbling. When I started to work with her, but my objective was, how do I really interact with different global teams and diverse perspectives and backgrounds? But today the objective has changed. It's much more a holistic view than just working with the team, but it's more about how can I really contribute to the community? How can I
Give us a
give back?
couple of examples.
Yes,
How-
the one about the girl who will shout when she's on your floor.
Yeah,
that's a big
this team member who had a very loud personality, and she would really raise her voice and speak in a very louder tone. And in one of the conversations that I was having with her and trying to probe a little bit with her that why she would do, in a typical scenario, I would just leave it there. I wouldn't really probe. But what really got me the courage after speaking to her is everybody is different. So appreciate the difference. Learn to accept the way the people are. You're not trying to change the chemical composition of the person, but you're trying to really look at their behavioral pattern. So in my one-on-one conversation with this team member, I said, why do you really speak loudly? This is a very engaging sales floor. So this team member really touched my heart, and I went to her, with a story. And her story was that since her childhood, her two elder siblings were away from the home and she was the last one in the family. So she had to really engage and talk to her dad, who had hard for hearing. And that developed her personality to really shout and talk and develop that persona in her. And imagine who could have really asked. In my typical way, I would say, okay, look, you got to be really softened, you got to really be raising your voice. But I went and probed those questions to her. Then you get the perspective of this
So what
person.
questions? Yes.
So typically, I would say, hey, why do you really have to raise your voice? Why don't you really, calm down? Is there anything I can do to help you? These sort of questions, being empathetic and understanding from that other person. And for that conversation, Subhash, you really need to
So
build
when
that trust.
ask them how they need help, they come
How
down?
they calm down.
Is that a
One,
need
offering
to-
help. Two, you have to be empathetic of the situation. Three, you have to, it's a process, Subhash. It's not going to be overnight. And exactly like we have built that trust. I share immense confidential information about my family, my part of my life. And I know that she's one source, and we always make fun that table has heard so many of our stories and holding our personal information, right?
They will put a call on.
Absolutely. So I think going back to the story of team members, so you got to really tap that, persona. And then when that person opens up, you know why they're behaving in certain way. And that further ties back your reasoning to question them. And then, you offer that help wherever that person is going beyond certain capacity. And you be humble, you coach, you offer that little bit of shoulders for that person to support.
So here what Chitra has done very cleverly is really make an effort to explore the context in which the staff members' behavior is embedded. So you, from the present, you look at the larger sort of constellation of variables that will be influencing this person's behavior. So in exploring the context further and further and more deeply, she's then able to, get a backstory, which makes sense.
I have a related question. So many of us go through toxic loss or bad loss, abusive loss at sometimes, and very difficult to know how to declare loss.
That's a difficult issue.
So, because our viewers here could be facing some of these day to day. I myself face when I was working, quote unquote, but still, how do you really tackle bad bosses at workplace, or a boss that is really abuse you in a way that he or she doesn't take your ideas? He always brushes off any innovative ideas that you come. But how do you deal with this?
Yeah.
I think one of the important things is, as we're talking about this mentorship and so on, is to really have either a group of friends that you can confide in, and these friends really have to be people who are, in a sense, better than who you are. Or you have a group of mentors or a mentor, somebody with whom you can share and mirror your story. Because what happens is that when you're individually left on your own with this toxic boss, if you will, basically you're sort of either navel gazing, you are self-absorbed the whole day and night. It's the bad boss versus the good you. And the story keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So I think to be able to bring it out within a setting which is trustworthy, which will respect you, and share what you're going through and possibly offer solutions. So once I think you've got that out, I mean, everybody's not in a position to change jobs. You've got to deal with this person. And I think once you have this kind of a filter between you and your boss and the toxic behavior, that's some sort of a step forward. And of course, always to have a hobby or something that interests you, which then distracts you from, the boss becoming the center of your world, is the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And just to add there, Subhash, I think from my side, given past experiences that my friends and colleagues would have experienced, I think over there, what I offered them was clarity in communication, because that really bridges the way you speak, set upfront right expectations, what you can deliver and what you can't, agree upon certain priorities, learn to say no. And these are some of the good things that you can package in. And that upfront clarity in communication also helps to develop that relationship. And it's a process, like I keep saying this, and I'm a big fan of Atomic Habits of James Clear. And there he talks about the process, not specific event. It's all about the process that you have to really go through step by step. It's not going to be all okay at the first time, and it may be that it won't work at all. But it's all about how do you uncover, live through that moment. And like Asha ji mentioned, go for a mentor, share those external, because some of that external validation and helping that coaching for you also helps to come here and execute those feedback in that. It's all about inner lens and self-reflection.
And also I would add to that, if I may, that sometimes catching the bull by the horns is not a bad thing. So that means approaching your boss with a real sense of compassion, for example, because he or she is also human. God knows what his or her backstory is. So I think making that effort often clears the air. It may not necessarily clear the air all the time. I mean, the boss may continue to be toxic and so on. But these are some things that you would certainly consider. And it will just leave you as an individual a better person. I think that really is most important. Because that's the Gita says that you offer your best, never mind to deal with the consequences.
So I think those are 3 C's I would say in summary: is clarity, communication, and compassion.
Yeah. Just to extend that thread, I keep talking to some Gen Zs who want to leave their job just because they don't like their bosses. And they think that if I resign this job and then start my own company, I will do much better. And thousands of them really jump their jobs primarily because they have bad boss. What according to bad boss is their own definition. Well, I will not get that, but the point is that they just want to get out of that situation.
Correct.
Thinking that they will make it up by starting on their own, which eventually they fail. So what is that you have to offer? What perspective that you need?
I think working with Gen Z and the younger generation at large, what I have really found is that they have fantastic hopes and dreams. One thing that I feel is that, in a sense, because the exposure to the outer world is so limited, most of the time, as far as youngsters are concerned, I think quite a lot of it goes to watching Netflix and also focusing on the cell phone. A lot of work, good work is also done on the cell phone. The exposure to other human beings, different kinds of people, different aspects of life, that's very, very limited. And I think it's the broader exposure that then softens your coping mechanism, sort of softens the edges. And a person who's supposed to be dreadful may not actually be, in your perception, all that dreadful. So, I mean, no book is a perfect solution to this. But the fact that if one can just broaden one's world, broaden one's horizons, and look beyond the, constraints of the immediate circle, I think things can fall into perspective. And I always believe in, whatever situation you're confronted with, if you can come out a winner, to hell with the consequences, that's fine, that's good enough, and the opportunity to move on. Because life is huge.
Right. Just to close this question, just close this topic. Should one resign because he or she has a bad boss?
It's impossible for me to sit here and pontificate on the other person's personal circumstances. He or she will have to take an independent decision. And I would always suggest, after consultation with them,
So that means mentorship is important.
mentorship.
So that's the point I want to really bring in, because how important it is to really have some mentor to really drive their own career, drive their own life to the next step.
And I had opportunity, Subhash, to work with GenZ, and I recruited them for a very basic administrative work. Oh my God, they just blew my mind. The work would take about 4 to 5 weeks of training. They learned the trade of the game in 2 weeks. Technology is super faster. They learned and they fixed it, and they executed the way it was exactly needed within 2 weeks of time frame.
So I guess we covered most on the mentorship parts of it, right? I just want to really understand how important is mentorship and what does it mean to you actually?
Yeah, so because I've been hearing about this word mentor, mentee, mentorship, I was obviously curious to find out what exactly does it mean. So mentor, apparently 2,500 years ago, the great Greek hero Ulysses, before he was setting off on his long voyage to the, unknown waters, he had to leave behind his young son Telemachus. And he thought that, Telemachus also needed to have an education whilst the dad was away. And he then appointed his very dear friend, trusted friend, someone he admired, someone who was wise, someone who, in today's jargon would be a great influencer. So his name was Mentor. So that's how we still have the word mentor. And from that, mentorship, mentee, all these sort of, subcategories have evolved. So basically, the concept really, I mean, which of course has changed over time, the concept has really been to have someone in your life who's, in a way, terrific human being, as you might say. That sort of interests me. So what I do, I'm in my own personal life, I certainly don't serve as a mentor, but I make sure that I know that my family is given, they are there, and I've got to do a good job with them. But when it comes to the external world, it's for me to exercise my discretion, um, good taste, and choose people as friends, whatever it is, or people I hang out with. They have to be better than who I am. So I hope present company speaks for itself.
Absolutely. And I think from those years, the word mentor or mentorship hasn't changed. The objective has remained, spilling over these years. And I'm so glad I call her my life coach. So Asha Dutia presenting to you all today. Asha Dutia is my life coach, and a sneak peek to all our audience that in coming up weeks and days that we would also love to introduce John Ronan, who is yet another my advocate and a mentor, whom we would really have those discussions. And then James Gibb, who is also one of our executive coach, who has transformed my corporate lens of a mentor. So variety of these leaders, mentors, sharing their experiences like Asha ji mentioned, admiration, inspiration, influence on your life is an impact that they have created. So you have to really tap whom do you really work with. Not everybody you can work with. There are certain mentors that you get clicked with. So she's my life coach, and I think here is our energy.
Mean is mentor, when you say mentor or mentorship, you bring that ingrained aspect of transformation in a person, in a behavior, in a change. Is that we are dealing with?
I think it's very much a mutual process because growth has to work both ways. You cannot be sitting on a high perch as the self appointed or self designated mentor unless both of you are equally vulnerable in the context and willing to learn from each other.
I like
Um,
that. If I may pause that, you brought that word vulnerability, right? In any mentorship programs that I have seen, although I've also attended, some of them, the aspect of vulnerability is so critical in really identifying those own vulnerabilities, so that you know that you have to overcome those in a way. Only then there is real freedom.
Absolutely, because otherwise it's sort of a half hidden shadow of who you are. It doesn't really make sense.
See, again, the mentorship in corporate life is very different. There you have to have a formal connection, send out an invite, agree upon the objective, agree upon the tenure and frequency that you will have the connections. But outside the company, outside the work that you have, outside the workplace, you can have these informal connections with, you can make, you're having that freedom to call a life coach, a guru, a mentor, a friend, and a good guide as well. And I'm willing to go with her, to cross and look at Kumbh Mela as one of our experiments in coming up weeks, right? So that's something that you
We'll
can
talk about Kumbh Mela in a while,
absolutely.
but I just want to interrupt you here, and then touch upon a point, though subtly though, is self-advocacy. When you're talking about mentorship, when you are grooming something, when you are shaping up someone's life, there is a notion of self-advocacy as well, especially in the corporate world, right? Somewhere you need to really put your foot ahead and advocate yourself, right? Otherwise, there is no one else who would do it for you. So how important it is, because people shy away from really self-advocating, really putting their foot ahead and say that, yeah, this is my domain, this is my space, right? How critical it is in the corporate world,
It is very critical.
especially from women's side.
Correct.
I'm bringing that woman deliberately because there is a next question that's going.
Absolutely. And I acknowledge that because it's very critical to go ahead and showcase your talent, showcase your expertise. And you have to again find a mentor, a coach who would be able to give you that platform to excel and explore as well. And I would really like to acknowledge John Ronan, who's one of my mentors, who's given me that advocacy in the company. He has acknowledged my little piece of work, has given me an immense leadership capabilities to go ahead and take up a very big responsibility of people engagement community for 2000 employees. I have ran many events, activities, quiz, games, and without this person supporting me and letting me fail and letting me go ahead and experiment with what I'm doing, he was constantly there behind me. Every week we would evaluate where we are, what is the plan, and that needs a meticulous planning process, right? And do you need that? Can everybody do that? You some may not, but I think what really needs to happen is that selfless thought that let me go ahead, and in this process there are some people who will lift you up in the process, and I think you have to really tap them. There are genuinely those selfless coach and selfless mentors who will be your good advocates.
So in the mentorship pursuit that you go with, right, how important is the aspect of empathy again, right? Can you touch upon some of your own experiences, how you brought that empathy out in a way to really shape up somebody's personality, somebody's behavior, or how important is it?
I think one is to, at least, when I'm engaged with another human being, is to really take the one down position, which is really a position of immense strength, to appear much, much less than who you are or whatever it is. And that then immediately brings forth a platform of comfort for, I think, both the people. And the moment you take the one down position, the kind of information that flows from this positioning and from this context is actually quite mind boggling. I've had some people, just come and speak with me, or we are talking for the first time. And I mean, I'm so grateful. I'm amazed at the stories that the inner stories that they are able to share with me, even if I'm sort of in the public domain, or in a public square or whatever it is. So I think um a sense of humility that I must have. I must make sure that I retain that a sense of humility, and always to be humble, to take the one down position so that the other person's narrative that emerges is always going to be honored. So for me, that is extremely important.
But this is totally against is what that I have seen. People who consult, people who do mentorship, they always think they are one up. But this is very different perspective you are giving. You are taking one step down. And is it the way that how you really treat being empathetic? Because people uh, will trust you only when they feel that you're not above them. Probably you're someone below, so that they can share their views, ideas, the inside desire, dark secrets, or whatever that you want to call. Is that how you approach?
Well, one thing I have to credit my professors at the university in America who explained the concept of the one down position. So I had I must say that I was trained very well. So this is a concept that is built within your professional practice. It should be built within the professional practice. Yeah. So it's really
That's interesting, very interesting.
the one down position.
Give us some examples of this that you have actually done this with.
Now you look at Mother Teresa, for example. When she was alive, and the government of India said to her that um, we offer you free air travel on Air India. The first thing she said to them is that, no, I don't take anything free. I just take free things for the poor. And as far as I'm concerned, I would like to work on the aircraft if I can. Of course, she was not allowed to work. But just a small example of taking the one down position. Um, she's, of course, a great role model in charity work and so on. She never hesitated to um, connect with the dying, the poorest of the poor, and so on, by becoming even lesser than the individuals that she saw. She never sort of positioned herself as the savior, always as one, the obedient servant, someone who was going to serve. So this is something that touches us, and I think it's really again to do with my training that I hope to become more and more empathic each day. And also, it's again my exposure to a range of diverse people that a lot of feelings come out, and I feel for that.
And she patiently listens to everybody.
Yeah.
That's
That
important.
brings a point that I read in your profile. I'm quite intrigued by that, where you worked with prisoners. Give us certain examples, some examples of where all you have dealt with prisoners. Give some your personal experience there.
Well, one was, of course, I was overseeing a project in the presidency jail in Calcutta. At that time, I worked for Save the Children Fund UK. And, there I was very touched by the fact that women who had received a life sentence, some of them actually, had babies when they were still serving in prison. Now, the prison administrator had a problem that, what happens to these children because they are still wards of the prison system. And then I, watched the prisoners, and the fact that, I mean, of course, I was allowed to have conversations with them. It was very, very moving. I could spot the resilience in them. Although many, a number of them were under life sentence, but they had made their homes, they had made their lives. And for me, this is something that transformed me. That no matter how terrible your circumstances are, it's really for you to make the most of who you are. Your circumstances need not necessarily define you. Now, if these prisoners, whom I had, first-hand conversations with, if they saw themselves as doomed for life, there would be nothing. They still did a little bit of gardening, they did the work, they said their prayers and so on. It was extremely influential.
Which year was this?
This would have been in the 80s. 80s. Another assignment that I had was because I was part of the international students group, we were assigned tasks to sort of to serve as cultural ambassadors.
There was so much of experience that you have got there, right? You know, is there anything that you have applied it to or the external world, corporate world, because that is a different world altogether. And the world outside that is very different. There are two different worlds together, right? Poles apart. How you're bringing those lessons into this world and really nurturing this world?
So thank you for that question. I always wanted to see if my skills that I had learned in my program would be applicable to different sectors. So the corporate sector, of course, is a critical sector. And I did two training programs for Tata Tea. Now, in the first program, I made sure, I mean, I always believe in working with terrific people. I have a, we have a very dear friend, American astrophysicist, um, who I with whom I collaborated, and we worked out a training module which included aspects of the psychotherapy that I had trained in. So that was again about how to handle different kinds of behaviors at work. Toxic boss, you have colleagues who are insubordinate and so on. So first we did a little questionnaire with the group that we were going to be working with. So my goodness, these were about 30 tea planters in Munnar, and many of them, I mean, some of them were quite cheeky, I would say, that, they were a little recalcitrant and difficult to engage in a group because we talked about qualities that a good manager should have and so on and so, which included empathy and taking the one down position, etc., which is, not going too well with them. But I think as we did a couple of role plays also and engaged them in taking different positions and so on. And I think our style of presentation was probably different from what they were used to. And I think in the end it worked quite well. And they loved the fact that there was, a terrific American guy who had come all the way from the United States and was working with them, midst the tea garden setting and so on. So we had a wonderful time. And then they turned out to be really, really good people. And then they, knowing that we would be pleased with the kind of philanthropic work that the Tatas were doing, they were able to share that. Not just talk about their pure corporate woes, but also talk about something that would please us. So I think we were able to make connections there. And we had a great time. We drank some great tea, and there was great food and very nice camaraderie. Yeah. So that was very interesting. And um, both my colleague and I, we personally did not experience a difficulty with individual behaviors. They were difficult, but they could be handled. On another occasion, I worked with a bunch of island chiefs in the Maldives Islands, and they had never worked. I got them in a circle, and I was in the middle. And see, the initial resistance to training was, I mean, there almost everybody smokes. So the island chief would sort of smoke and just throw the butts of cigarettes at my feet. As, oh God, this is awful. How am I going to deal with this? So I just let that be. I continued sort of, tried to connect with them and so on. And then afterwards, it's like a toxic boss.
Yeah.
It kind of, toxicity can't go on and on and on. I hung in there. So I think one of the lessons for me personally is that, don't react quickly. Hang in there, see, but you keep offering your best self. Don't get pissed off. I'm going to kill this guy. Yeah.
And I think application of those values that Asha ji has learned these years, I'm a living example coming from those corporate world. And she's practicing that on a day-to-day basis with me. And we exchange, even if we don't meet, we exchange notes. We talk about, I have this tough situation, Asha ji. Tell me, how do I do this? And this is my behavior. This is how I have dealt with the situation. Do you think I was okay? So I get a constant feedback and validation from her. I think, and those things that she has learned these years, that has transformed, and that I get a comfortable feedback from her, which I think is great, and you get a outside perspective as well. Sorry.
So, on that validation part that you just touched upon, how important is for anyone to validate every now and then? Because at times validation is seen as weakness, right? Not as strength. right? Is there any different perspective you would have?
Is validation important? I would say for a person with a thriving fire to do better, best, definitely yes. And I'm constantly looking for continuous learning, and it comes from all sources. Um, does this generation really look at validation in a different perspective? Yes, for them validation is also surrendering themselves. Sometimes they're opening up to their vulnerabilities, but for me it is okay. And I have not been good. I have not had it all. I have had my weaker moments. So it plays important, and it also depends on who you are really going to validate. Sometimes you're really comfortable with the family members. Sometimes may not be with your own siblings.
So you need someone,
You need that trusted
that
one
emotional
You need that
person
emotional
that you
support.
can rely on
Right.
at times, because that's most important for anyone.
Absolutely.
Right. Some people are very good at when they are one-on-one, but as they go in public, 4 or 5, they just don't talk. They just keep it to themselves. Despite having great ideas, they don't really share. And they are very well with their emails, chats, and all, but they are not humanly communicative. Right? Is there any guidance or?
I have found that, now when I meet, in my building, it's, we have about 160 residents. We have a lot of youngsters. Now there's one group that usually, keeps quiet and so on. But I go to them and I wish them. So that's taking the one down person. So, hi guys, how are you doing, etc. Then I get something from them. Because the moment it becomes them and us, they and we, or they and I, then we create a chasm. I go and I said, okay, but let them not wish me. There are many people who don't wish me. But my thing is, come what may, I'm going to wish everybody. Again, offering my best self, to hell with the consequences.
Yeah, but that connect is very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the effort, the onus is on me.
Yes, that's an important point. How do you see in your company?
This sort of the silent talent pool that you're referring to, right? Do they have resources in such in corporate world and organization? Definitely. No one size fits all. You have variety of programs, tools and resources for such group. I would call it as, we had fantastic program we designed. We call it as reverse mentorship. Now such group of people, you pick up a senior team members and you assign to a junior team members, or call it as the younger lot of Gen Z, who is assigned as a mentor and a mentee. Here a mentee is a senior member. So what you do over there is you empower them by taking one step above. You empower them to take more challenge, to coach. So you put more responsibilities on their shoulder to teach and coach this elder person or senior person in the organization. So they embrace that. So you break them that from the silos working off, right? Second thing we also have is this mentor connect programs and series. Now again, I mean, my requirement, my coaching capabilities would be different than what others would be. So we do those mapping of skills, competencies, and you look after the person. And again, all these are through the tools. And you look at who can be my best mentor that I can go and learn. So you have that mentor connect series. And apart from that, you also have variety of employee resource groups which really encourage to go ahead and do outside contributing to communities and society. And again, thereby you participate. So I think I've seen some people who have been very quiet, silent at desk, but when it comes to their own work and productivity, they're extremely efficient. But can they really be a good social folks that they would come on a smoke break and chai break with you? May not be. They're not comfortable.
So how do you deal with it?
I just leave them and with their own spaces, give them that space, give them, and as I said, let them embrace their own change and give that comfort zone is important. And you
So you
can't
don't
really
try to change them,
Don't try.
make them
Absolutely.
more social.
You can't really bring in that aspect of it. Not everybody may like the smoke breaks with me.
Yeah. No, so here I have a question for you. So would you take your, there's a group that's somewhere, would you take your cup of coffee and say that, can I join you?
Absolutely, I may do that.
You would do that.
And I used to have this regular series of meetings, Chai with Chitra, and every Wednesdays I would take the teams. And some of them really thought it was
forceful act, because there was a formal invite. But eventually, when I stopped over the period of time, they wanted more, so they would pull me. While I won't smoke, I won't go for a smoke break or have those social drinks, but some of the folks says, why don't you really join us for those a little bit informal?
You broke that.
You broke those, we did break those barriers, absolutely.
No, but I am keen to understand if you had seen someone who is totally protective, who is totally, behind the scenes, but they want to really come forward, but something in them really stops, right? Right. Have you worked with any of these people where you really brought that side out, right? Because that is something most sales and marketing guys struggle, right? Though they're extremely good at their work, I'm not questioning that at all, but it's always at the back end. It's always at behind the scenes, and they do have a desire. I want to really look like that. I want to be like that, but they don't. They don't really break that shell and then come out. How do we?
Well, from another context, if I may offer an example, I was working with a group of teenagers, and there was one boy in particular who was very, very shy and very frightened. This was just after the riots in Bombay, I remember. And his father, and this was from a Muslim family, the father had been put in jail. And this boy had, really become truly withdrawn. He was not participating in class, etc. Then it was time for the annual concert, and what I had like chatted with this little, with this guy. Well, not so little; he was taller than I was, and I suggested to him that I'd like to work with him so that he takes a lead role in this play. So he almost fainted. That there's no way. I said, no, I'm going to back you all the way. And I had this young boy learn his lines, and he absolutely, I mean, he must have had sleepless nights, but he performed. And that was because I stood by him. And even when the performance was going on, I told him I'm going to be in the wings. So if anything, if you miss the lines, I have the script. Absolutely not. You are going to be terrific. And I stood by him, and he did well. So, of course, this is an example. I'm not so sure if this can, generalize. But I think the prospects for generalizing such examples are very much there. And that was one of my most rewarding experiences. That someone, you just feel, oh God, why should I break my head over this guy? And then my work with another young boy who was a stutterer, and he could never take part in an elocution competition because he stuttered and stuttered and stuttered. And then through the sort of, as the psychotherapy unfolded, I found that he could actually read a poem quite well without stuttering, almost without stuttering. So I said, okay, for the next elocution competition, I negotiated with the organizer that this guy is not going to speak sentence by sentence, but he's going to recite a poem which, he's going to put together. And in front of a large school audience, he did that.
Wow.
So for me, that was wow.
No, that's awesome. That's life changing.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to know how at any age can one open up to new experiences towards personal growth. And I hear that you're going to Kumbh Mela, both of you. Just touch on these aspects of at 76, you are 76. I want to really understand how opening up at this age, new experience, new horizons, just help us understand what's going on.
Fantastic example of ageism that Subhash has just brought up. I'm, of course, delighted to say that more than 3 decades separate the two of us. But here's the thing in this whole business of working with Chitra, I've always I come through as someone wanting to push the envelope. She's pushing the envelope. And then she sort of threw a curveball at me and saying, Asha ji, what about Kumbh Mela? Well, there's absolutely no way that I was ever going to go to Kumbh Mela. Chitra, on the other hand, is an individual who's deeply entrenched in her faith, and has her disciplined sort of rituals. She does, I mean, she's one of those individuals I know who's faithful to the religion that she believes in. In my case, my religion is in my daily actions, and that's it. But I said, I'm coming, okay, and I'm going to be with you.
So transformation happens at any age is what her point is. So
Exactly.
age is just a number.
Your point. True. No, and then when you think of it, I mean, see, for this, when Jeff Bezos had his sort of space travel going, there was a 90-year-old guy from Star Trek who went, for example, So I'm just, focusing on all these role models. That's what I'm doing.
Awesome. We wish you great journey. I'm sure you'll come back with amazing experiences. I've heard a lot of stories there. Probably you'll share most of them in our next podcast.
And I was inspired by Chitra. God knows I may even sort of, dunk my head in the holy Ganges or whatever it is. So be it. Yeah.
But I guess there are some bikes that will take you. Don't have to walk 20
We are not,
kilometers.
I'm not thinking of that at all. We are just going, finished. So 25th February, we are headed. And if all goes well, we return on the 26th. Both of us.
So we are all geared up for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us and sharing your personal experiences. I'm sure the audience there viewing this podcast would be really amazed at the insights that you really brought out. And more importantly, this is the deviation from what we usually do in terms of marketing, sales. And this is a totally different perspective that we brought because this has to do with the mindset change, right? The behavioral change. Once you understand how humans behave, only then you will be able to do something stellar, right? And the ideas that you have given to us are really beautiful. I want to put it that way because those are implementable, not just in the air. Thank you so much for taking time, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having us. And I just want to say that Chitra's dream was really to be able to speak in front of an audience of 2,000. So we hope we're going to get 3,000 viewers for the podcast.
Thank you.
Please subscribe. Thank you so much.